Hello and welcome. This is Vince talking about cover letters today. I'm going to answer some frequently asked and commonly asked questions about cover letters. The first question is, do I need a cover letter? In short, yes, you do. They're still necessary, and in fact, they actually can help you stand out, especially when they're written and presented effectively. Most people don't write cover letters anymore, and therefore you can stand out if you do. More importantly, it's not only that you write a cover letter, it'll be how you write a cover letter. Writing the cover letter, actually writing it, is not the hard part. There are lots of great resources. I won't be talking about too much today about formatting and templates and stuff. That's actually not the purpose of this video. I'm trying to go deeper and explain and shift your thinking about what a cover letter could be. In my view, a cover letter is actually more of a research document than a simple form letter, but we'll talk more about that later. To write a good letter, essentially, to begin with, you need to really do your homework. Let me explain what I mean by that. The second question is, how do I differentiate my cover letter? Well, the cover letter is going to be the first thing that a potential employer or intern, company that's going to give you an internship. Let's just, for the sake of this video, I'll use the word employer, even if you're not necessarily looking for a paid job at this point. But it's the first thing that they see, right? In the old days, first of all, why is it called a cover letter? It covers the resume, right? That's in the old days of when everything was done on paper, you would send an envelope with a resume, and on top of the letter would be, on top of the resume would be a covering letter that would introduce you and hopefully increase the interest that they would have in the resume. Those days are gone where we are necessarily submitting things by post, by mail on paper. You can still do that. In fact, actually, that's another way to differentiate yourself. That's a tip that I'll give at the end of this video. In that letter, though, it's your best chance to stand out. Don't send a form letter. Don't just change the address. In the real old days, you may have mailed out hundreds of resumes, or 10 or 20 or 30 resumes. 5 or 10 years ago, when I started counseling, people were using job boards like monster.com or whatever, job sites. You could electronically send your resume out to tens or thousands of potential employers. Those days are also over. We're in a new era where tools like LinkedIn are completely changing the whole job search landscape. Cover letters are still important. In fact, perhaps they're even more important, but only if the cover letter that you send isn't just a form letter, is not just the same as every other letter that you might send to every other employer or every other letter that employers are receiving. To customize your letter, you need to do your homework. Homework involves 2 stages: reading and then talking to people. Well, 3 stages: reading, talking, and then writing. Again, writing is the least of your problems. If you're not reading enough, or if you're not talking enough, what you write won't be any good, so it probably won't even matter. Let's talk more about this. You want to talk to real people. You want to set up informational interviews. I'll talk about those in a minute. And also, you can just talk to friends or friends of friends casually. When I say talk, this can, of course, be through email or whatever, chats online if you're at a distance. But exchanging ideas and getting insights from real people is going to make a big difference. That's going to form the content of your letter. What you're really looking for here with this cover letter and with these conversations before you even write the cover letter is a referral. Let me just read this because it's an exact quote from a recent New York Times article. By the way, much respect to the sources in this video. A lot of this information is coming from places like New York Times. You can find the links to the sources of these articles in my blog. I'll be posting some links throughout this video so you can find the actual articles that I'm quoting. But here's the quote, and I'm going to read it word for word so I don't mess it up. According to this recent article, referred candidates are twice as likely to land an interview as other applicants, according to a new study of one large company by 3 economists from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. And here's the important part. For those who make it to the interview stage, the referred candidates had a 40% better chance of being hired than other applicants. So let me just repeat and paraphrase here. If you get referred, which means to say a friend of yours is at this organization and they refer you and they say, hey, I know this person's good, you should take a look. If somebody puts in a good word for you, either formally or informally, you're twice as likely to get interviewed, and it's all about the interview. And if you're referred, you're not only twice as likely to get the interview, but then you're 40% more likely to end up getting what you really want here, which is a job offer. So this is a big deal, but it's not going to come easy. It's going to involve a lot of work. So let me give you some more tips and answer some more questions. Your next question is probably, how do I get referred, right? If I want to get referred, how do I do it? Again, talking to people. You want to talk to people who do what you do, who are working at the places where you want to work, and who study where you want to study. Again, some of you I know are applying for graduate school, and cover letters don't always, the logic that I'm laying out here, the methods work. Whether or not you're going to write a cover letter or not, it depends on the graduate school or program to which you're applying. I'm not saying you should always send a cover letter for graduate school, but talking to people who are studying where you want to study and what you want to study is, of course, always a good thing. And I'll talk in a bit about what to do after you've had those conversations. What you're really trying to do through these conversations is establish a hypothesis. The hypothesis you're trying to establish that's a big word, it just means an idea, right, that you can prove. What you're trying to prove here is fit. So my next question is, what is fit? Fit, in short, fit is culture, and culture is people. Do you share our attitude? Do you share our values? Do you share our sense of humor? Do you share our way of solving problems, way of relating to the world? You know what I mean by fit because you've either fit or not fit at the places you've studied and the places you've worked. You're giving up. They're looking to hire someone who they will like and get along with, or like but not always get along with, right? Creative conflict, or someone, if the culture of the organization is to challenge each other politely and professionally, but to question everything, if that's the kind of organization you're joining, you should know that. But if the organization is much more hierarchical, if it's based on the founder's personality or something, and it's more about following orders, you should know that. And are you that kind of person? You really need to know if the organization you're going to join is going to be a good fit for you. Both sides need to know this. Your cover letter, you want to tell a good story why this particular job and this particular company matches your needs and matches your goals, and again, matches your personality. You want to make an argument and you want to have a story that there is a good fit here. What you say isn't that important. It's actually just the fact that you're trying to make this kind of argument in a cover letter, because again, 90% of the cover letters or more don't even try to do this. They don't even attempt to make this argument that, hey, I know you, I fit with you. That's a very difficult thing to claim. It requires a lot of time and research. Most people don't do it. That's why you should. I am not someone who recommends sending out hundreds or thousands of resumes, and it's not going to be possible for you to write hundreds or thousands of these kind of cover letters. Be very selective about where you apply, and spend a lot of time talking to people at these organizations, at these companies, and I guarantee you your results will improve and you will get more offers. So I recommend that you choose and focus your efforts rather than just randomly spewing out hundreds or thousands of resumes or attending job fairs and just trying to meet and greet people. It's not how it works in this day and age. Maybe it never worked that way. When the economy was booming, sure. But when times are tough and companies have to be very selective about who they hire, this kind of informational interviewing and one-to-one conversations, again, conversations can be chats, Skype, Google Talk, whatever, Google Chat, or in the old-fashioned face-to-face, whatever, or email, whatever it takes. But I'm talking, or messages through LinkedIn, whatever it is. I'm saying making an effort will pay dividends for you in the long run. So an informational interview, I'm not an expert on them. There's lots better information out there. This is a summary of what I found on Wikipedia about informational interviews, just so I'm clear about the term. It basically is where you interview the potential employer to find out, is there an opportunity? And again, if there's a fit between who you are, what you offer, what you want to do, and what they're looking for, and who they are, and what's their culture, and what's their... there's great information online about this. I strongly encourage you to check out these resources about informational interviews that are out there. I'm just trying to clarify the term in case you aren't familiar with it. All right, so you've had these conversations, you've identified these people, you've used tools like LinkedIn, which I don't work for LinkedIn, by the way. I set up a LinkedIn profile a long time ago. It's still a tool that I use every day to stay in touch with clients and former clients, to stay in touch with friends and find out what they're doing. Facebook is great for social stuff. I'm happily married. I'm not looking for romance. People say Facebook is for dating, LinkedIn is for jobs. I think that's pretty much true. Facebook is a nice way for me to share photos of my kid or look at other people's pictures or something like that. It's better than email in some ways, but I don't really take Facebook very seriously as a way to find a job. LinkedIn is much, much better. The tools in LinkedIn, you can join focus groups from your university or an organization or your former employers. You can, but also don't ask for favors. Have something to offer as well. Don't expect too much of other people, and always be thankful. It surprises me how much that sort of seems to be a lost art these days, where people just simply say thank you for something that you do for them. People notice, and people do enjoy being thanked and praised. Old-fashioned, that kind of stuff still makes a big difference. Okay, when you've had these conversations, mention the real people. What did they tell you? How did their words confirm your interest? And you actually want to quote conversations and mention actual impressions. I'll give a quick example. My first work out of university, when I graduated college, I graduated Stanford in history. I knew I wanted to teach, and I wanted to eventually run a nonprofit program. The nonprofit program that I eventually ran had been started in San Francisco, the Bay Area where I'm from, and then it got replicated. There was it got modeled. It became a model program for a school down in New Orleans that started the second program, and then from there, this thing just started really popping, and there were new programs going up around the country. It was a very rapidly expanding network of these nonprofit programs where young people, college and high school kids, were learning how to teach study skills, reading, writing, math, everything else, really concrete, to super bright, high potential kids from public schools who wanted to be, for example, the first in their families to go to college. And so there was all this energy and all this excitement and all this youth and idealism and realism, practical skills. It was a fantastic program. I remember meeting this guy, Michael Goldstein, who had been a star teacher at the first program at San Francisco, and then he was one of the founders. He was one of the first staff to go down and work in New Orleans on this program number 2. He went from program number 1 to program number 2. He came back. He was all fired up. He had this cool T-shirt on. He was you could just feel his energy. He was so excited about what was going on down there in New Orleans, and that made a big impression on me. So I mentioned that in my cover letters when I applied to work down at that school in New Orleans. I mentioned Michael, the conversations we'd had, the impressions he'd made upon me, and through that, through simply mentioning him in my letter, I got introduced to the founder of that program, a guy named Jay Altman, and then from there things really started popping. I got to meet the headmaster of that school. I got brought in. They set up a special position for me. I got groomed and mentored, and then 2 or 3 years later, I got to take over the program. it was eventually it was a struggle. It was an amazing part of my life. The first 5 years out of college, I'll never forget it, and I'm really grateful to Michael and Jay and Mike, Michael Lacopo, the headmaster, and all kinds of people were really instrumental in giving me an opportunity that I really wanted and that I thought I could do a good job. And eventually, trial and error, I hope I did a decent job living up to their expectations and giving something to that program. So you put those conversations into your letters as an example. Next question, how should my letter be organized and how long should it be and what should it say? All right, this is probably what you've been waiting for. Most cover letters are 3 or 4 paragraphs. Cover letters that I help my clients write have 4 main sections. I call those sections 1, salutation, 2, purpose and context, 3, differentiators and contributions, and 4, next steps. So when it comes to the salutation, use a real name whenever possible. It's a real turnoff to just say, dear, to whom it may concern, or dear hiring manager, or, dear director of blah, 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 blah. Try to get a real person's name. Even if the person reading the letter isn't the person to whom it's addressed, it shows that you made the extra effort to find out the head of the department's name, if nothing else. So, dear Ms. First Last, and title. The purpose of the context. So, I'm writing you today because I've recently learned that you're hiring someone to do such and such. How did I hear about this? A friend told me. I read it in a online job board, or it's come to my attention through so and so. We want to look. Put yourself in the shoes of the person reading the letter. Who are you, and how did you find me? I'll give a personal example. I get inquiries all the time, every day, from potential clients. It makes a big difference if somebody takes the time to write in my letter, hey, you helped my friend so-and-so get into such and such school. They said great things about you. That really increases my interest and helps me take that client seriously. I don't take every client who comes to me, and it makes a big difference if you were referred by someone that I helped in the past. Or, if nothing else, again, we're all human. I have an ego. As much as I'd like to be a Buddha or something, I'm not. I'm totally a human just like you, and I got feelings. I put a lot of time into this stuff, and I care about it, and I want you to know if you liked it. So your website's been so helpful to me, or thanks for putting up that video about blah blah blah. I wanted to follow up with you. It makes a big difference when someone contacts me that way, and you should take that to heart. How did you how did you learn about the opportunity? And if you can say something nice about their website, if it's sincere, or what it is they're doing, don't just flatter for flattery's sake. But if you're sincerely impressed by something, never hurts to mention it. People appreciate it. Differentiators and contributions. This is the hard part. In the middle paragraphs, you want to show why you're a good candidate. Show that you're knowledgeable about the company. You want to convey a clear story about your career and highlight specific past achievements. This can be a full narrative, paragraph. These days, oftentimes it might just be bullet points. I said 1 page. Actually, I'll talk about this a bit more. These days, it can often just be a screen. People are reading stuff on iPads or smartphones these days. So you want to. It's all about being as condensed and specific as possible. It's not just copying and pasting the resume. The resume shows what you did. Sometimes in the cover letter can show how you did it, and most importantly, what motivated you to do it. If you're from a non-traditional background, if your background doesn't exactly fit or meet the standard path that someone might follow for this particular opportunity, you want to tell a story about why you fit. Let me share another example from this New York Times article that's really good about cover letters and about the hiring process now in this age of things like LinkedIn and other forms of social media. In the article, the HR manager is quoted as saying, so the person working for this famous food company is hiring chefs. They have a test kitchen, and they're hiring a chef for the test kitchen. The woman who applied, who got hired, had worked for a manufacturing company. She'd never worked as a chef. in a restaurant or a test kitchen. But in her cover letter, she talked about growing up in a family that was passionate about cooking, where she frequently cooked and made meals for her family and friends from scratch. It was a story that she included in her cover letter, and I think it, according to the article, it caught the attention of the hiring manager, and that person got hired even though she really didn't technically meet the qualifications. Qualifications are just guidelines. I've often been hired. I've been hired for things I wasn't technically qualified for, and I know lots of people who've done the same. You've got to make a case for why you fit based on your background or motivation that may be outside the scope or scale. You've got to make that argument. Another way, finally, I'm going to talk about differentiators. Don't assume that the person reading your resume, or in fact screening your resume, they don't even read these days a lot of times. Or again, it can be a computer. If you get past the computer and you reach a human, they're reading these things really, really fast. And they're not always able, just from the resume, to understand what differentiates you. So this is where the cover letter, you can add phrases like, unlike other candidates you're seeing that probably have, this quality, I also have another quality because of my recent experience at a certain company. So you're actually telling them what it means, what your experience gives you. You're not assuming that they will figure that out on their own, because guess what? They probably won't. Other people may seem enthusiastic about teaching. I've never taught full time, but let me just explain to you why I'm passionate about it. My mom's a teacher, or I was raised, or been a tutor, or I was the first one in my family to have this certain kind of education opportunity. Teachers made a huge difference in my life, and it's been a dream of mine to become a professional teacher for a long time, or whatever it is. Finally, try to mention a specific contribution, to actually go beyond, to say that you understand what they're looking for. I had lunch recently with a former boss of mine, and he's been a CEO of a bunch of big companies, and he was telling me, what he looks for when he hires people. He put it to me really simply. He's like, for example, if I'm hiring, the way he said it was, he put himself in the shoes of someone being hired, even though he's a senior guy who's pretty much only a CEO these days. He just moves around as a sort of turnaround CEO specialist. He's a really cool guy. He's done a lot of really great things, and I respect him a lot. He said basically, if I was 25 again, and I was looking for a sales job, I would figure out what is salespeople, what's the quota, what's expected, and I would go into in my cover letter and in my interview, I would say, look, I know you expect a first-year salesperson like me to sell X amount. I'm going to beat that expectation by 20% in my first year. And just boom, say that. It takes a lot of confidence. It proves you did your homework, and it's a claim, and it's measurable. And guess what? If you don't meet it, you might not be there for year two, but it gives you, and it really, really sets you apart. So don't claim it if you can't do it. An example from my experience that worked for me when I was getting my first job, I had gotten a fellowship to write a public service fellowship to write a fundraising guide. Running a nonprofit, fundraising is a big part of it. Fundraising is hard. Asking for money isn't easy. Managing grants and stuff is a challenge. So I knew that fundraising was a big deal for this program, and I pointed to the fact that, look, I wrote a grant myself. I got money. I spent a summer writing a fundraising guide. Based on that experience and based on that information and all those people that I talked to when organizing that guide, I know I can help you meet and exceed your fundraising goals in my first year. It's like the kind of thing I said. In fact, I really struggled with fundraising when I walked into that nonprofit. But by the time I left, we went from being way in debt to having a surplus. It took longer than a year, but I did do it. It took 5 years, but I made it happen, thanks to a lot of help from a lot of really generous people. What I'm saying here takes a lot of work. Yes, that's why it's worth doing. Most people don't do this. That's the best way to differentiate yourself, is to work harder and work smarter and talk to more people and reflect those conversations into your cover letters. when you're wrapping up your cover letter, you want to summarize what you offer. In closing, I bring a toolkit comprised of leadership, strategic planning, and analytical skills. This is a template. This answer here is not particularly good. In closing, I'm confident that I can help you meet and exceed your expectations. It'd be great to talk to you in person if we had the chance to have an interview. I'll be following up in a few weeks, or I'll be in your city, visiting friends at this time. I plan to be in town on X date, or whatever it is. Follow up with a specific plan and then do it. Don't just say I'll be in touch in 2 weeks. Be in touch in 2 weeks. Always thank them. Again, thank yous are really important and often forgotten. Thank you for your time and attention, and then sign off with your name. I have a sample cover letter. I'll put a link to it. I don't think it's a good use of a video to go through a sample, but I do have samples. Check my blog for that sample, and I hope it helps you. It's hard to write sample cover letters. Everyone's case is different, but I did my best. I hope it helps. How do you submit it? Okay, so you've talked to all the people you need to talk to. You've read everything you can read, and then based on what you've read, you've had good conversations, not asking obvious questions, but asking good questions that demonstrate your fit and help you figure out your fit. You summarize those conversations in your letter. Now what do you do? First of all, try to figure out how they're going to read it. I suggest uploading it. The problem with uploading it, though, is they might not click on it. So I kind of cover all the bases. My email is actually a very short cover letter. The body of my email does what a cover letter needs to do, maybe in bullet points. 300 words, 250 words, just a brief synopsis. Here's what I offer. Here's how I know about you. Here's who I've talked to. Here's what I offer that others might not be able to offer. Here's how I can meet and exceed your expectations. Attached, please find a full cover letter and my resume. I'll be in touch within 2 weeks. So the email is, in fact, a cover letter. Still attach it. And then here's the kicker. This is what 90% of people don't do, and you should do. If it's something you're really serious about, 2 weeks later, send a hard copy of the cover letter and resume. Send it through regular post and attach a handwritten note that says, this is my second submission. Second submission, I'm very interested. Here's why that matters, and here's how that can have an impact. And this is a story that's quoted in one of these New York Times articles, and I've done this as well, and I know it's true. A computer, you may not have made the cut because the computer didn't find enough keywords, or the hiring manager or whoever it is, the administrator, cut you because you didn't have the master's degree or the certain qualification. You didn't major in blah blah blah, or you'd never worked in blah 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 type of company, so you didn't make the cut. But then now you've sent the handwritten one, so the hiring manager never saw the previous one because it never made it up through his filters that he set up. But actually he wants to meet you, and so by sending, or she wants to meet you, by sending it in handwritten note with a snail mail letter that they're going to open and read, there are documented cases where you might get the job. So those kind of extra steps are really make a difference. Last thing for this interview, or for this video, try to get this under 30 minutes. Common mistakes, typos. Have friends read it. If you can pay someone to read it, great. If you can't, ask a friend. But again, don't abuse friendships, and don't expect anything from anybody, and always say thank you. And give them something in return. The world doesn't owe you anything. You got to learn that. But if you ask for a favor, give a favor in return, or at least be very, very thankful for it. Another mistake is I. Every paragraph starts with me, I. Talk about the company. Through my discussions with Michael, I understood that your program is expanding and you might be looking for people in the next year or two who could step into managerial positions. I think I'm qualified because da-da-da-da. Here's how I can help you. Talk about the organization. Identify what they need and how you help them meet that need. Make it easy for them to feel that you know what they need and that you can offer it. Finally, don't mention too much. Don't talk about your salary expectation or your location preferences, or don't get into little stuff. Also, if you don't meet the qualifications, don't point that out. Let them mention it. If they want to interview you, they will. You have no business pointing out your weaknesses in a cover letter. Or, I know the job requires a master's degree, but I don't have one. Is that okay? Don't. The cover letter, keep it brief and positive, and talk about that stuff if you get invited. All right. Here's a summary. So, a cover letter is a result of hours of research and multiple ongoing conversations. Second point, if you can get referred for a job or opportunity, you vastly increase your chances of success. Third point, by gathering all the information for your cover letter, you'll be ready for the interview. I hope you get invited for interview. Speaking of which, I'll be making some interview-related videos, so please subscribe and catch those when they come. And thanks again for your time and attention. I wish you the very best. Signing off for now. Bye-bye.